Hello, students! Today, we're going to do a quick and a very focused revision of the chapter on heredity to make sure you are all ready for your exams. Let's first map out our revision for today. We will start with the basic terms, the foundations of heredity. Then we will look at Mendel's experiments, both the monohybrid and the dihybrid cross. After that, we'll see how genes actually work, we'll understand sex determination in humans, and we'll finish with some very important points for your exam. Okay, let's dive into this. We will begin with the most fundamental concepts of this chapter. First, let's recall the definition of hereditary. What is it? Well, it is simply the passing of traits from parents to their children from one generation to the next. And variation. This refers to the small differences we see among individuals. This is actually key for the survival of a species. For example, imagine there are some bacteria that can withstand heat. They will be the ones that survive a heat wave. That's variation at work. Now, here is a very important distinction for your exam, so please pay attention. Remember that inherited traits are genetic, like your eye color. Acquired traits, on the other hand, are learned or experienced during your lifetime, and they cannot be passed on to the next generation. This image brilliantly illustrates an inherited trait. Whether your earlobe is free or attached is something that is determined by the genes you receive from your parents. Let's move on and see how this all builds up. We will now revise Mendel's first experiment, which looked at a single trait. Let's just verbally walk through the logic here. So, the F1 generation are all tall because the trait for tallness is dominant. But they still carry the genetic factor for shortness, which is why it reappears in the F2 generation. So the crucial point is this: the trait we see, like tallness, is called dominant, and the one that is hidden, like shortness, is called recessive. Please remember these two terms carefully. Genotype is the gene combination, for example, capital T, small t. Phenotype, on the other hand, is the physical appearance, like tall. Now that we have revised the monohybrid cross, let's see what happens when we consider two traits together. Now, what's really interesting about this cross is how it shows new combinations. You can see round green seeds and wrinkled yellow seeds. This proves that these traits are not tied to each other. And this gives us the famous 9:3:3:1 ratio. Please make sure you remember this ratio for your exam. This experiment leads us to Mendel's law of independent assortment, which simply states that different traits are inherited separately from each other. But how does a gene actually cause a trait? Let's quickly revise the mechanism for this. So remember this sequence. A gene contains the instructions to make a protein, and it is that protein's action which creates the trait that we see. This is possible because genes are on chromosomes, and during reproduction, each parent contributes one chromosome from each pair. This ensures the child receives equal genetic material from both the mother and the father. Now let's look at a very specific application of these principles, how the sex of a child is determined in humans. Please look at this diagram carefully. It clearly shows that the mother always contributes an X chromosome, so it is the father's contribution of either an X or a Y that determines the sex of the baby. It is very important to understand this clearly and scientifically. The sex of the child is determined by the father, and the chances are always 50-50. Finally, let us summarize the most important points that you must remember for your board examination. Please go through this checklist. You must know your definitions. Be very clear on the differences between these key terms. Remember the ratios, and very importantly, practice drawing the diagrams. With this revision, you should feel much more confident. Keep practicing, write your answers clearly, and all the very best for your examinations.